Hi, everyone. Today, I want to talk about Voice of Customer, our research program, our Voice of Customer playbook, if you will, at the agency. It's very tactical, a lot of examples, templates, questions, things like that. But before I go tactical, considering this audience, I thought I would go very high level at first, very strategic. Because we need to be more strategic and not completely rely on tactical growth. Is that okay? I feel like my head is the sun and this is the little moon. Russell, I stole that joke from you. Thank you. Sorry about that. And I want to go strategic from a little bit of my personal strengths, as Carl mentioned, coming from not explicitly the world of marketing, but instead the world of research. And research is what I like to look at it as finding and staying on a line of inquiry as we're asking questions and finding solutions to problems. So I want to present strategically 3 mental models that I use in my research and conducting research, but also applying research successfully. So I'll start a little personal and then jump into these models before we go into the juicy tactical bits. So as I mentioned, I just started in marketing several years ago with CXL, and before that, I was doing a lot of fishing. This is a recent catch of mine, and there's my hairy belly as well. You're welcome. This one caught in France. I love to fish. I love everything about fish. I love to catch fish, eat fish. And for 10 years, I was studying fish. I was using fish data to model effects of climate change, water quality, all sorts of things. My background is in evolutionary behavior, and there are a lot of carryovers to the world of marketing in that field. But the biggest carryover is the way to do and the way not to do research. And so that's what I want to dive into, these 3 mental models that are all about the idea of knowledge and knowing and understanding. That is the goal of research. And that's also the goal of communication, which is what we're talking about in terms of voice of customer today. But before I jump into these mental models, does anyone know this fish? Raise your hand. Yeah, there's a few people that know this fish. In Texas, we call this a yellow perch. In French, perche jaune. In Europe, it's known as European redfin. It's known as a common perch. It is known as a river perch. A lot of names. But what's funny about this is that all of these names, do you think that they help me catch this fish? No. Do you think that they would help me conserve this fish? No. These names actually tell us more about the people giving the fish the name than the fish itself. And that's the first mental model. Knowing the name of something is not the same as knowing something. This is a simple sentence, but it's very, very powerful. And it speaks to a lot of the principles that we maybe are more familiar with in the marketing world. Some of these behavioral psychology principles, like System 1 versus System 2, like the mammalian brain versus the reptilian brain. This speaks to just that. And it also speaks to why we suck at communicating and why we suck also at marketing sometimes, right? Because here's the deal. We are not selling our products. We don't sell products. We sell success to our customers, and we forget that. Carl, does Kodak sell film? No, Kodak did not sell film. Does Nokia, did they sell phone hardware? No, but they thought that they did, right? So let's see how this applies. This is a brand of ours that we work with, of Procter & Gamble. They sell natural deodorant. So if I go to the site and I'm looking for, I don't know what this is. That's not my slide at all. Alexa's slide? Is that Alexa's slide? Oh, that's so horrible. Let's see if I go here. Oh, look at the transition behind it. It was so good. So if I go to a natural deodorant website and I see a tagline that says, deodorant keeps me fresh and smelling nice. That doesn't speak to my customer pain, does it? But this site has one of the best taglines that I've seen on a site. It says deodorant without the chemistry experiment. Because that's why I buy deodorant that's natural, not to pollute myself every day. And that speaks to customer pain, right? It doesn't characterize the product. Remember, You want to speak to the customer pain and not just the name that you give your product. If you do that, you will add millions in revenue to your business. Whoa. This is gone too. There we go, look. Deodorant to stay fresh and clean. Fools, as Craig likes to say. No, deodorant without the chemistry experiment. Thank you. So, the next mental model. This is one of my favorites. Knowledge is equal to experience plus sensitivity. We cannot understand with experience alone. It's this mental model where best practices and guidelines and tactics go to die. This is also an under-realized criticism of Bayesian statistics, by the way. We can geek out about that later. But this is a really powerful one, especially in our world. Think about best practices and guidelines specifically. We recently published hundreds of e-commerce best practice guidelines on our website. If I give you 12 guidelines for designing a e-commerce homepage, can you tomorrow go and be successful at that and design a well-converting website? No, there's a lot of nuance there. And the guidelines themselves can be very distracting towards the principles at play, the sensitivity and how it works across a breadth of experience. So let's see how this works. Another client of ours, I anonymized this one, but they sell payroll services, B2B, Fortune 500 company. Last year they did 13 billion in sales, and this is the tip of the spear for those efforts. This is gathering all of their leads. And what we're looking at is the above the fold of a page. And look here on the start quote button, there's an email field. This goes against a lot of best practices, like foot in the door technique, sunk cost effect, things like that. You would think that let's hide that. Here's an alternative version, just that start quote, and let's put those more relevant fields behind that action, right? You would think that that would be the way to go about it. You'd be wrong. This one was a massive failure compared to this one right here. This one right here created enough initial friction that allowed the user to scroll down and wade through the value messaging below the fold. So engagement was twice as much here, but so were the leads, right? So back to my hairy belly, the fish. Back to the fish. So we know that the name of the fish will not help me catch the fish, conserve the fish. We know that what about knowing the fish? What if I knew where this fish ate, where it spent its time, when it was active? Will that help me catch the fish? No, it won't. My grandpa used to say that you need a line in the water in order to catch the fish. And it's true, very much true in science. In fact, there's a whole subsection of science called an implementation crisis science, where in science we're very good, and general marketers I think also, we're very good at collecting data, summarizing data, coming up with a plan with the data, but we're not good at acting. And I think in marketing, maybe sometimes we call it a data trap. This is the third mental model. It is not enough to know. You need to show that you know, especially with human communication. It's very important. And think about the best communicators out there in the world, the people that are making an art of it. How are they doing it? What makes them the best? Think about in the world of comedy. What makes the best comedian? Timing. What about art? What makes the best artists out there? An historical, cultural perspective is generally what it's thought. What it takes. What about advertising? What does it take to make the best advertisement? Generally, it's thought it needs to be extremely memorable. In all cases, it's a beautiful application of context. We need to understand when to talk to somebody, how to make it relevant, and especially use contextual memory to connect brand value to someone's personal value. This is what it takes. So again, it's not enough to understand. You have to show that you understand, and it's all about context. So, how does this apply? This is another brand we work with, Serta Simmons out of the US. They have a direct-to-consumer brand called Tomorrow Sleep, and they sell mattresses. And they had a landing page, and they were sending people direct to a product detail page. They had a lot of great content underneath that they weren't taking advantage of, and we completely redesigned that user journey, allowing somebody to spend twice as much time to wade through the value of all of that content and messaging before they got to the product detail page. Doubled that engagement time. We also doubled the revenue per visitor and tested this one a bunch of times. This was a great success for us. Another example, this one also through that Procter & Gamble brand, native deodorant.
We really concentrate here not on conversion rate with this brand, because believe it or not, I think that their conversion rate is too high. Believe it. So with here, we concentrate on average order value and lifetime value. And we want to understand where to show the right type of value to the right customer, depending on different actions that they might have taken beforehand. A lot of what Russell spoke to, I think. And so we're thinking a lot about and constantly testing, and there's tests running right now on what exactly to show to whom in terms of cross-sells and upsells. If we shut these down, we lose around 8K a day. That's $250,000 a month that these cross-sells and upsells are adding to this business. So now let's shift over to the tactical side of things. We all are familiar with the classical rubric for marketing: audience, message, action. Today, shifting over into the tactics on how to collect voice of customer data, we're not concerned with message or action at all. We're concerned with audience, and specifically 4 pillars of audience: perceptions, behavior, motivation, and anxiety. This is what we're trying to get understanding about. This is what we're trying to know. And this, over here on the right, are all the techniques that we're going to use to understand those and to know those, and be very surgical about it. All right, we have very specific techniques that we use to get at very specific core understandings about our customers. And so I want to walk through this, starting with user perceptions, users and their perceptions generally. UX benchmarking is what we use for this, and for good or for worse, one of the more common known UX benchmarks is the Net Promoter Score. This one is a UX benchmark that gets at customer loyalty specifically. And we often see them in little pop-ups like this that come up. Here's one through Appsy, one through Hotjar. We're seeing great success in doing this through SMS. You'll triple your response rate if you do it this way. Again, very surgical understanding of customer loyalty as they go and maybe experience your customer journey, right? There are a lot of other dimensions of customer and user experience, though. Loyalty is just one of them. Here are a couple ways to ask that. That top one is the NPS question, but there's another one as well. Some of those other dimensions of user perception: credibility, appearance, and usability. Together, these are what's known as the Super Q standardized survey. Jeff Sorrow developed this out of Measuring You. And it's really powerful to do this across your site. Longitudinally is really nice. We worked with Jeff to add a 5th dimension, specific to conversion rate optimization a little bit, but really specific to get at an understanding of value propositions or success propositions. And we love to do this. You need a lot of people. It takes time to go through all of these questions after they've gone through your site. But it's a standardized survey similar to System Usability Score. And you can do it longitudinally across time, understanding how these perceptions might have changed across time. But we like to do it competitively. We recently published a study online on our blog here that compares the experiences and the user perceptions in these dimensions of Clinique, Lush, Fresh, and Sephora. And when we do this, we're able to help prioritize our testing campaign. We're able to help brand marketers prioritize, how they might shift brand accordingly. We're able to understand how these sites fall relative to each other in these different dimensions of user perception. So it can be really powerful. So, quick wins. You need panels to do this. And in the US, we're lucky. We don't care so much about civil liberties, so we can use Amazon MTurk. They have exploded in the last few years. 2 years ago, you had 2 premium qualifications. Now you can target pet owners, you can target online purchase histories, you can target employment histories, financial assets owned. It's very, very powerful. In Europe, check out ClickWorker a little bit for this type of thing. Now, transitioning over to behavior, understanding friction on the site. I'll be stepping through user testing and passive feedback. So if you're a big shop, if you're an agency, definitely you want to invest in an in-house setup, and a moderated in-person setup like this is a link to a really good article to hack together one. But for the bang for the buck, we often rely on a remote user testing, and you can do it moderated or unmoderated. I won't go into details on how to run through it, but I will list out some common mistakes that we see with user testing. One, the wrong users. Two, trying to get data on user perceptions. User testing is not for asking questions. It's for watching user behavior, and that's a real important distinction, and we see that get wrong quite a bit. Leading questions and tasks. You don't want to bias the data that's coming in. Launching and reviewing all at once. We like to do what's called a 2x2 approach. So you launch two, you watch it, you review it, and you adjust and go forward. And then finally, not accounting for a full range of customer intent. Generally, we recognize 4 types of customer intent on a site. I want to know, I want to go, I want to do, and I want to buy. These customer intents were recognized on mobile specifically about 4 years ago by Google. They call them micro moments. Notice that 3 of them are conversational and only 1 is transactional. So you want to make sure that you account for that full range of customer intent when you're setting up those tasks for user testing. So now we go on the other side of understanding friction on a site, and this is passive feedback. We use, especially in testing programs or with sites that are releasing a lot of code, this is handy to essentially get at crowdsourced QA. So Usabilla made this really popular with this feedback button that we're now seeing pretty ubiquitous across a lot of sites. And here's an example from TUI, an online travel company out of the UK, where we use Usabilla to understand some big bug issues that happen. This is a case where they did a big code release, and they found out through their Chrome extension they were losing a ton of money. They weren't allowing users to search for destinations, and they were losing about $400K a week. The Usabilla platform allowed TUI to understand where the problem was persisting and allowed them to target that. And what makes it nice is it allows us to understand all of the metadata associated with that user session that was having the problem and send it to the right team to address it. Another example from Virgin. This one. This one is on their app. They weren't allowing the users to provide a lot of feedback on the app, and so sorry about that. So they weren't allowing a lot of users to provide feedback on the app, and so what they did was they instituted it, and they saw a huge increase in the positive App Store reviews. They allowed what they did was make it easier for users to provide feedback through the actual app than the App Store. I'm going to skip along because I got caught up there. So now transitioning into motivation and user goals. This is an example from Money Supermarket, also out of the UK, a car insurance comparison shop. Here's an example where the team at Money Supermarket were very intent on increasing sales on mobile. They had a very aggressive goals that were set, but before they enacted any changes, they set up a top task survey to understand what users were there for effectively. And what they found out that there was a massive mobile halo effect. People coming to the site on mobile, exploring, and then shifting over to desktop to pull the trigger to actually transact. And this was pretty extreme. It's really common often, especially with mobile and desktop, but it was extreme in this case in that people that were coming on mobile didn't even own a car, let alone had a driver's license. So, and there was a complete inversion on desktop. People were really there to look for quotes and actually buy them. And so this shifted the team's approach to what they worked with mobile, the messaging that they provided, much more conversational, much less transactional here in this example. Now shifting over to motivation. Here we're looking to understand from the user, from their words, what's motivating them, how are they describing the user experience through the site. And here it's important to understand who we're talking to. So one, first-time customers. These people came for the first time and they converted. We want to understand what are the words that they're using to describe that buying experience right after the fact. 2, VIP customers, people that are spending maybe 5x AOV. How do they describe it a little bit differently? Your whales, effectively. And then you might think about some persona-specific examples as well. And how are we doing this? When we're asking and doing a survey for motivation, we're asking a few questions, not just one, not like a poll. And I'll get to those here in a second. And you can do it in a lot of ways. You definitely need a survey tool. You have a survey link, and you can send that via SMS. You can also put that on a thank you page, for example, after the transaction, especially if you have a digital product. But for the bang for the buck, we love email. And here's an email template that we love to use. I won't go through it, but I will put a special point of emphasis on the subject line. What you get for what? To be very explicit. We see a lot of bad subject lines, and we see a lot of success with being explicit in this manner. So for example, if you do have an incentive, get $5 store credit for for 5 minutes of your time, or help improve this product or this service with 5 minutes of your time, something like that. Questions. Here also we want to be surgical in what we're after. So we've got a set of questions that we recommend, but we also want to know what to do with the answers after we get them. And so we've got a set of questions that addresses benefits, the 2 most common ones that we love to use. What matters to you most when buying something online? Please list the top 3 things that made you purchase from this site. Make the customer work a little bit. And then we also ask some questions specifically to understand value proposition or success proposition. What made you choose this site over other online stores? What did you like most about your shopping experience with the site? Something like that. Again, that helps us transition the answers into actual test hypotheses. So now into the last bucket, fears, uncertainties, doubts, and customer anxiety. For this, we get to intercept polls. I want to show you 3 types with increasing levels of response rate. This one, on a client of ours, Dermalogica, we recognized an unusual drop-off on the product page, which is not uncommon in e-commerce. And so we hit them up with a slide-up poll that's timed for after 15 seconds, and we ask a pretty aggressive question: is there anything holding you back from making a purchase today? The response rate here, you might be used to this, is a common technique of around 3–4%. We're finding a full screen takeover as someone is transitioning from cart backwards to be twice as effective. So response rate 7–10% sometimes. Here's an example of us doing that with Ticketmaster. KLM is an example of us hitting them up right after a transaction. All right, so here they're scrolling up. This GIF, yeah, well, I think it hit them up right after a transaction. We asked them, how was your experience on the site today? This one has a response rate of about 70%, so high that KLM actually thought that there was a bug in the system. So quick win, if you do anything, if you take anything away from this talk, you want to add surveys or little polls to your thank you page. Anyone have a poll on their thank you page right now? Not bad. Here's some examples of some of the questions that you could cycle through. There's no harm in this type of survey because they've already transacted. So what almost prevented you from completing your purchase today is the best one that we've found. So now we're collecting a lot of data, a lot of qualitative data that is as well. And we get a lot of questions on how to process that data. So I've got a slide on that. Generally, you want to set up a rubric a lot like this on the right. Your responses are the rows, and as you come across customer issues, you add them into the columns. And I put in a link here for you to dig into some of the stats reasoning, but generally, for a general product, general population, you're wanting 200 to 250 responses to have a nice confidence interval that the strength of signal of that issue that you find is actually an issue. So wrapping up, 4 key takeaways. Start or expand how you collect voice of customer data. Don't survey for survey's sake. You need to have goals and be very surgical about that and not cross-pollinate your goals. You need to process and prioritize, distribute the learnings. And finally, you need to act and implement. and measure, of course. And the reason you need to do this is because if you are not doing this, if you are not listening to your customers, filling that customer blind spot, if you will, then your competitors are. And by competitors, I don't mean your direct competitors. Remember that first mental model. Your competitors these days are not maybe the ones that you're familiar with. They are the companies that are listening to their customers. Companies like Uber, companies like Apple, Google, they are listening to their customers and they are making seamless, frictionless experiences, and they're raising the bar for what these experiences can be. Here are some snapshots of what Google has been up to in the last year. Very aggressive at capturing voice of customer feedback. I don't know if you know what this implies, but I think it implies that voice of customer is going from nice to have into an absolute must right now. Experience is trumping everything. It's trumping your product, it's trumping the price, and if you're not listening to your customers, you're not improving your experience, and you will be left behind, and the competition will make your customers leave you. Yeah. So with that, I leave it with a bunch of resource links at the end for you to dig deeper, and that's all I have.